Greg, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Awesome, thank you. All right, welcome to the first Developers Roundtable of the year. I thought we had one already in January, but apparently we didn't. So the year is already moving very quickly. So we haven't seen each other since last year. So happy 2026. Just a reminder, this meeting is recorded, which is helpful. We can upload them and then talk about, people can refer to them later, but that's a reminder, and please just silence your cell phones. That includes me. Next slide, Lala.
And we have Q&A
literally reaching for it.
available on this meeting this time around.
Okay, so you can type in questions. If you're online, you can type the questions and then Lala can read them, or we can call on you. So, all right, so just some directors updates. Another sewer lateral update. The saga continues. We're talking briefly about the rental registry study session that's coming up. That's pertinent to a lot of you. This is probably a surprise even to the fire staff, but I have a little WUI reminder. This is going to be like our reminder till the end of time, just about some of the changes related to the WUI. And then we'll jump into our roundtable discussion. So for directors updates, first I wanted to cover just some upcoming meetings that may be interesting to all of you. We're having a special meeting for the city council, so it's not a regularly scheduled meeting. So just keep an eye out for that if that's of interest to you. David will talk a little bit about this more in depth, but that's the rental registry study session item. So it's the good news, it's on its own meeting. So it's going to be the only thing we talk about at that meeting. I anticipate it will be highly attended. David's been doing some outreach to a number of different interested parties. Again, it's a study session, so no decisions will be made. And David will talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about in that meeting. On March 3rd is the budget update. This is an item that will be presented by finance and the city manager's office, just about kind of what the update is with some of the budget status in the city. We had talked last year about some upcoming potential budget deficits. And so we've done some work internally. Each department has looked at done a budget exercise to look at maybe where we could trim some fat. And so this is going to be a presentation from the city manager and finance department about that and some other issues and items related to the budget. On April 7th, sewer lateral is coming back, right, for a study session or for decisions? Or do we know yet? Both. Exciting.
It'll actually probably be a public hearing and not a study session.
Okay, great. So public hearing, which means decisions can be made.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We're anticipating right now that we will be able to bring recommendations to council for update to the municipal code. So that requires a public hearing, just as it's agendized right there.
Perfect. So Chris will present more on that in a moment. And then on 4/7, for those of you interested, is the climate action plan progress report. So that's an interesting topic that's pertinent to the development community as well. I just wanted to provide a quick staffing update. There's been a lot of movement lately, and so I just want everyone to be aware, faces you may not see, new faces, things like that. So we have in the room our interim fire chief, Harris. I did not warn him that I'd be doing but he's a really wonderful asset to us as we seek a permanent chief. Chief Harris, do you want to say just a little tiny bit about yourself for people?
Yeah, I retired after 28 years with the city of Paso Robles. Prior to going to Paso, I spent 9 years down here in San Luis, so it's great to come back and see some familiar faces and some new ones at the same time. But yeah, great to meet all you guys.
So, and Josh attends these meetings too, and so he's obviously like a main point of contact in the development community. Josh just went like this. So we have a lot of, really dedicated professionals in the fire department that are partnering with community development a lot lately. So, we are trying to flag issues early for people and work through them proactively. We have released the recruitment for the chief building official. It closes, I think, in about 2 weeks. So if you know anyone, please pass that job posting along. Please share it on LinkedIn, like whatever you can do to get the word out. We're really looking for like a talented, dedicated, customer service oriented professional. And so, and if anyone wants to talk to me about the position or have questions, let me know. So just wanted to let you all know that. Josh Daniels stole one of our permit techs from the front counter over to the fire department, which is great for him. But that means we're down to one permit tech in the front. So we're also looking for a permit tech. We're still keeping things moving, but just for awareness, we're down to one. So she's very busy. And then we also, an inspector moved on last week or the week before. So Stephen Ames is no longer with the city. So we will be recruiting for a new inspector as well. So again, if you know anyone in the area, it's a pretty hard position for us to find people for. Trevor and I are looking at also getting some consultant help on board just to fill, Stephen took on a lot of the larger projects. And so we need to make sure that we can continue to provide that same level of service to the public. So just for awareness. And then we have kind of new faces at the table for Public Works as well. We have now 2 assistant directors in Public Works and Utilities. And so Madeline will be speaking in a minute about some things over in Public Works. And so Madeline is the assistant director over the Public Works side, and Shauna Scott, assistant director over utilities. So this is a really exciting development as well. And then Erin is like the Uber director over it all. And so I hope that's true. But just for awareness, there's been some structural change in Public Works and Utilities. I think that one of the main benefits of this is that there's much more collaboration between all of the departments, including community development. And so we have a really good working relationship. So if issues come up related to all of these departments, we're talking internally and happy to work through them. Any other staffing updates that I'm missing? We are also in community development down a principal planner in the housing division. So this was Teresa McClish's position. She retired in December. And so David Amini is acting as an interim senior planner in that position, taking on some more responsibilities than he had before. And then we're going to figure out, what to do with that. We did a recruitment for that position, did not find someone to fill that principal planner level role. So we're going to be reassessing that in a few months probably. So, yeah.
For the inspector role, how much training are you guys willing to do? Because we could probably dig into people that are in the trades that might be a good fit, but most of them are either not college educated or so I don't know how much.
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe we are looking to hire at the inspector 1 or 2 level. So it could be someone newer to the industry. One of the challenges we have is we have Trevor and then 2 pretty new inspectors who are also learning. Ideally we'd get someone who can jump into some of these larger projects. We also have Brian Hurley who does the large projects as well. But if there is a talented person that we could train up, like more than happy to consider that and talk to them, especially if they're interested.
It would be a good fit for you.
Yeah.
Are you interested, John?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about any of those things I just talked about? No? Okay, I'll ask Madeline, can you give a little update about the Cultural Arts District parking and maybe how that's beneficial for development downtown? We had some questions about that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, sure. So the Cultural Arts District parking structure has been under construction for about 2.5 years, maybe more, if you consider kind of all the phasing of the project that we did. But we're really excited to announce that we will be opening the garage in the middle of March. We're looking at March 17th as a tentative date right now. And so that is really exciting for the community and specifically the downtown core, because not only will that provide additional parking, but long-term parking. And Donna, our parking manager, Donna King, is here to talk a little bit about parking rates and how that can benefit the community. But in addition, that's like long-term parking permits, things like that, that can help benefit people who live in the area. So I'll kick it off to Donna just to talk a little bit about the rates.
Absolutely. So as Madeline mentioned, the Cultural Arts District Garage is going to be opening mid-March, and it will be, as far as the rates and the way that the garage works, will be the same as our existing garages. And so hopefully it will be very familiar to businesses and community members already. But the big benefit, especially on that in that area of downtown, is that we didn't have great long-term parking options for those residents that live downtown, as well as employees and business owners. And so we offer a $45 a month garage permit. It's good for all garages. And so that's going to be a huge benefit for those in that area that are currently purchasing what we call a 10-hour meter permit. And that's $60 a month. It'll get them off the street in a well-lit garage that is clean and beautiful, and also save them some money every month. So that $45 a month is going to be a great deal for anyone that parks more than 5 days a month in the garage. And then we also have a really low cost business validation offer. So council has approved this for all of our garages. It's not new, but again, it'll be really great for the businesses in that area near the garage that maybe aren't using that right now. It's $1 an hour instead of the standard rate in the garages is $2 an hour. So it's a 50% reduction for those businesses in that area that can offer that to their customers, pass on that savings. You know, if they come and shop for at their store, they can give them a $1 or an hour of free parking for $1. So some really good opportunities for those. And then the other great thing for our residents and long-term parkers is we will have 41 EV chargers in this garage. So it'll be the most chargers we have in a condensed area in our city. There'll be the level 2 chargers, so someone can park at night before they go home for the night, or in the morning before they go to work, and just charge up their car all day. So that'll be some great opportunities. Yeah, happy to answer questions.
Are there any overnight spaces available?
So all the garages allow overnight parking. There is a maximum, and that's just for the California Vehicle Code, of 72 hours without moving. So that's the same as on street. They can park, if they buy a $45 garage permit, they can park as much as they want during the month. They just have to move their vehicle regularly.
What would it take to circumvent that? Would you have to designate long-term parking or something?
You mean if they wanted to be over 72 hours?
Yeah, because part of the drive behind less successful parking is a more walkable and bikeable city. And so if we're trying to encourage people to walk and bike, but then they have to go move their vehicle every 72 hours, it's a little bit counterproductive for that. Right. And so I would especially say in an urban environment where there's a lot of walkability, I'm envisioning people wanting to park their car for weeks or months while they live downtown, and now they just have the car to get out of town. Right.
Yeah, that would have to be, it's something that would go before council as really more of a municipal code adoption for long-term parking. I will say in downtown, specifically, we do have just a limited amount of parking. And so I understand what you're saying of having people be able to not have to go back to their car, but we also don't really want that long-term car storage in our downtown. It would be preferable to have long-term car storage somewhere outside of our retail hub. And so it's just a dialogue and a discussion that we would have to have with the community and with council to really just determine what the best practice is. And part of that is going to be this garage is new to this area. We haven't had a garage there. And so we'll have to see, what is the occupancy? How much is it used? If it's just not being readily used, then maybe that is long-term storage would be something we want to look at. If it's full all the time, then we're going to want to be able to promote that turnover. So we'll be able to look at all those things after the garage opens. So,
one last question. Where's the best place to get information on the commercial validation
for the business validation. The parking office, which is in the first level of the Marsh Street garage. We also have some information on our website, but the business validation is really cool in that it can be tailored to the business. So for example, a movie theater might want 3-hour validation rather than just like a 1-hour validation they're just handing out to their customers. So we can tailor that to them. A hotel might want 2-day validations that they offer to their guests. And so so what we found for the businesses that have been purchasing them is that everyone has just a little bit different. I mean, it's still really, the root is that it's $1 an hour, but we can tailor it to what you need. So you can set up personalized appointments so we can go over all those things.
Thank you.
And with the opening of the garage, we will be promoting the validation a little bit more than we have in the past, because now we'll kind of be like, oh, all 4 garages will have this parking validation. And so we'll be doing a lot more outreach than you've seen in the past with all of the businesses.
Thank you so much. This is really exciting for, everyone who, with the conversations we've had about densifying downtown and right around downtown and providing those parking options to people who need to park their car overnight. So hoping that this new parking structure really is a catalyst for some of that. So thank you for that information, and you know who to contact if you have additional questions about parking. They're always available. Just one last staffing update. Not necessarily new, but Laura Fiedler is here. I think this is her first time at Developers Roundtable. Laura's with our economic development team. And so, if you have questions or anything coming up, if you hear people who want to establish a new business, want to understand what they need to do, the process, what the city's interested in, Laura's a great resource, and she works very closely with planning and building and safety as well. All right. Okay, Chris. Take it away.
Thank you, Timmy. Okay, so this is just a follow-up. I know we had a discussion last November, and we've had a couple of smaller in-person meetings. John, again, apologize for not getting you in on the last one, but wanted to provide an update for some items that were adopted in December. And then really we're looking forward to April 7th, and we're going to be focusing on the wastewater flow offset program in particular. So just to recap first on items that were adopted on December 2nd of last year. The first item, which I think everyone's familiar with, is that we do have an updated capacity constraint map with 2 new areas. And I can answer any questions on that, but we have 2 areas. 2 were removed from the old map, and that has been adopted as part of our general plan and also published online on the portal, which folks use to determine offset requirements and based on the location in the city. Related to that, we do have our online portal. If you go to slowcity.org/laterals, this is a tool that developers and realtors use to determine the private sewer lateral condition as we know it. One thing I wanted to highlight here, and something that we talked about in December, was the concept of a matchmaking program, and some of the feedback we've had over the years is difficulty locating offsets and just the awkwardness of that. And so staff came up with a concept of a voluntary opt-in matchmaking program, if you will. We're going to be doing some targeted mailing. We had some hiccups with that, but we are going to be actually making this opt-in program live later today. And so this will be located on the city's website at slowcity.org/offsets. And there will be a new form that folks can fill out. And basically what it'll look like is right now you pull up a lateral condition. It will identify if it's poor, failed, unknown, good condition. If a property elects to opt in to this matchmaking service, There'll be a new icon located on the map. It'll be a bright yellow dot. This isn't showing up as yellow, but it will on the map. So folks go here, they say, I want to opt in, potentially get a discounted rate for a replacement. All those properties will be populated on the map as pre-screened for participation in the offset program. And more on that to come, but I'll pause there briefly if folks have any questions on that. Just again, meant to be a facilitating tool to encourage and make it easier to find the offsets in the city. Again, looking back on what's already been approved and adopted, we do have a new rebate for CCTV camera inspection of private sewer laterals. So any lateral located within those capacity constrained areas is now eligible for this $350 rebate. And any property type, commercial, multifamily, single family would qualify for that rebate. So that program is live. We had our first application last week. And so those are starting to flow in. The intent here again is to improve our data set of those two areas and identify, what's bad, what's good. We still have about 50% of private sewer laterals that we just don't know the condition. So we want to incentivize, one, just to get attention on the laterals to have people thinking about it. And then two, open up more potential for offsets if required. So that rebate's live, $350. It can exceed the cost of the service. So, we had an inspection performed. It was $300. They would get $300. And beyond that, fairly straightforward. We did make a modification to the existing replacement rebate, which is $4,000. And the change being that, again, focusing on those two areas of capacity constrained, any property type would qualify for that replacement rebate. So we're talking about multifamily and commercial would qualify if they're in those two areas. And then citywide single family properties would still qualify. So that has been approved and adopted. And that is a change from, what we've been
Dustin
doing.
has a question online.
Okay, go ahead, Dustin.
Actually, Christina, for developers who had purchased credit for areas that are no longer on that map and who have paid money for credits that they no longer need, is there any consolation for that, or is there anything to be done for that?
So I'm not sure if I got the question. For properties that were purchased in capacity constrained areas
That are no longer in those areas.
that are no longer located there.
Purchased
No,
credits.
We
Credits.
have purchased credits from other homeowners
Yes,
instead of them going to the city program. We have purchased credits. We have paid for their lateral to be done instead
Yes.
of them going to the city program. In order to have those credits ready for our project, that is no longer on the city map now.
got it. Okay, I think that's a good question.
Pretty good question.
My first thought, Miguel or Sean or Aaron, you might weigh in, but I don't know that we could match that. I know we're focusing on the capacity constrained two areas, and it would need to provide an offset for those areas. I don't know if there's a nexus for those that have been dissolved.
They were capacity constrained at the time of purchase.
They were then and they're not now. Got it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think this is a good, I think it's a good question. I think, and I'm not sure how widespread it is. I'm not sure if this is the only one like this, or if there are others. So if anyone does know of any others, I think it would be helpful to know. But I think this is one we might want to set up a specific time to talk to Christina and really understand the background on this, gather the information and see, what we do have in the way of latitude on that and see what any options may be available to us on that for consideration. Because I understand the equity question that you're raising right there. I think that's one though, I'd want to dig in a little more and understand a little more of the background and history. And again, what we have in the way of latitude as staff.
Right.
Yeah,
So we can set up a time to talk, Christina?
And I think a follow-up question too is, it's when you say like you purchased a credit with somebody, does that mean that lateral has already been replaced? Or just that you've worked out an agreement with that property owner and maybe we can dive into that information and those scenarios at a
No, it's
separate
been
meeting?
replaced.
It's already been replaced.
It's a recognized credit with the city. We have all the receipts. It was constrained at the time that the deal was made and the lateral was replaced.
Okay. Yeah, Christina, reach out to Chris, or Chris maybe already has your contact information and we can review that scenario and meet with you on that.
The only thing I could add, Shauna, this was a condition of approval for an entitlement that could change the conversation. So we need to look at that.
Yeah. All right, great question. Did somebody else have their hand?
Ian had his hand up.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I have a similar situation as well to Christina, so it's definitely not a one-off.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah, these were conditioned projects. So in other words, you got the entitlement through the offset condition?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Ian, Christina, if you can, I'll have my email on the last slide. If you can reach out and we can definitely follow up with you on that.
I mean, but Miguel, to be clear, it's a blanket wide condition. If you apply for a permit in that area, it's required to be done before you're able to get your permit. So it's not really anything that applied for a permit for an addition to that area. It's an automatic condition,
Right.
not through an entitlement process.
Yeah.
Right, because ADUs don't go through an entitlement process. They go straight to building permit. And it's a condition of permit issuance.
I think part of the conversation and what Aaron's alluding to is this would be a transition period to focus in on the new area. So I think we should be able to work through that.
How do we bridge the gap?
And if the permit isn't pulled yet, it isn't a condition yet. It's not, the project isn't done yet. It's still a process. It isn't a condition in my eyes because it's not, if it was conditioned on that one item, then that would be a condition. But as of right now, that is not a condition. It's no longer
correct
in a constrained area. And I haven't yet met any other, there are other conditions still to meet. So it is not pending this one condition. It's no longer a condition. Right?
That's correct. Yeah, without brainstorming, I think it sounds like we may have a path forward, but we need to understand the context of the timing and the conditions. So we'll sidebar on that one with you and try to find a solution.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Last item on here, just to highlight for the rebates. We do have a page specifically for the rebate applications, lateral rebates, solicity.org/lateral rebates. And that will take you, there's a form for both camera inspection and replacement. There's one form for both. You just identify if you're doing one or both in applying for that. And other than that, the process is very similar.
Do you have a pool of money set aside, or just how many ever come in, you guys will either deal with it?
We do. We have.
Or is it going to run out, I guess is what I'm.
We're going to run out at some point, but what we've found is we haven't utilized all the funding to date. And so the thought is we expanded eligibility for who can get the replacement rebate. And then two, adding this additional inspection rebate. We're trying to use what we got efficiently. We don't know how far it's going to go. It'll take it to the end of the fiscal year. If we do run out of funds, you would be on a waiting list for July 1st and you'd still be able to get it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and then moving into really what we're focusing on moving forward is the wastewater flow offset program. And something that we've heard loud and clear over the past 2 years is the impact of existing infrastructure and how that's treated, as compared to new development, how we're going to handle that. And this was an item that was deferred in December. We're going to be bringing it back, and that's really what we're focusing on in April. So the current recommendation, and we're still putting together the exact details of how this would look, but one of the changes that we are going to be bringing forward on April with the draft ordinance change is a requirement for inspection upon sale replacements. And there are two items we're really focusing on here. If property sale goes through, they do this inspection and the lateral is identified to be in poor field condition. We don't want to ignore that any longer. It's part of the puzzle of resolving this capacity issue. And so one, what is that trigger? What has to be replaced? And then how long does that property owner have to do it? And the current concept is we will be proposing, and this could change before April, but we're talking about those properties, again, focusing on capacity constrained areas as a start. Any properties or laterals that are in poor field condition would be required to be replaced. And the time frame for that replacement would be 12 months, which is the standard condition for any other replacement requirements that we have, such as those considered triggered from a spill or other condition. They have 12 months to do it. We would allow that same time frame for these folks to get their lateral replaced. They would be eligible for the rebate, which would soften the blow partially. And then again, this is just acknowledging the impact of all the existing properties that we know are in poor condition, and don't feel we can ignore that any longer. We've agreed with the message that we've heard, and we've met with the realtor community a few times now, and I think they're kind of understanding this is coming. I think the argument from that side is, how long are we going to have to do it? And then, which laterals are going to have to be replaced? Everything, or just, those that are the worst condition? And so that's how we're framing the discussion. This would be an ordinance change that we will be bringing in April for adoption. But I'll pause there. This is a major change. It doesn't directly impact your business, but it is something you've requested that we consider. So I want to pause there for any feedback on that. Anybody has it?
Any progress on equating the sewer flow from a new development versus a failed lateral or a poor condition lateral?
We're working through that. I got that in the next slide, actually.
Oh, all right. This is a great idea.
Yeah, so I can move on from that, but wanted to pause briefly. This would be a change. Not everyone's going to be happy, but again, we're trying to be equitable and really focus on the problem areas mostly.
Certainly, if people are conditioned to repair their laterals, they're going to be much more willing to negotiate with the developer to have a more fair share of the cost, or be more reasonable about it if it's something that they're having to do.
Yeah.
I think though, strategically, I wonder if this would make less people want to take their rebate for getting their sewer cambered, right? Because that's, how are you going to know where the poor and failing laterals are, right? And so we'll camera your sewer for free so that we can turn around and tell you that you have to replace your lateral.
Yeah.
So I think that there's probably a little bit of a missing link there for how you get to the identifying which ones are poor fair. But in general, it does feel like a much more equitable table to be at when people are asking you, like, hey, I have a lateral I need to replace. I know that you need to replace laterals for your project. Can we partner together? It feels like that puts us in a much, again, fairer position.
Right. We're getting close.
To say like, hey, I'll split it with you since you have to do it and I need the credit.
Right.
Right. That's a good change.
At the sale. They already video.
So these are required already as a requirement
at
for sale.
Sale.
Yeah. Right.
So this would be like
Are
a
you
roof
talking about a
inspection.
volunteer, like if somebody wants to
I missed the
rebate
ads. Okay, I'm sorry. I saw the upon sale.
Yeah,
Sorry.
this is the
Never mind.
context.
Yeah.
Mandatory.
Take it back.
Have to do it already. What do you do?
I think that like, I guess along those lines, like it probably should just be, if you have a failed lateral, you should have to replace it.
Right.
Right. And like, maybe this is less about the at sale. Like if you have a lateral that's like hurting city infrastructure and hurting the common good by dumping dirt water into the sewer in storm drain events, like you should probably have to replace it. And if those people did have to replace it, it would make our job of negotiating with them and how we do that a lot better.
Right.
Because right now, if you go to somebody and be like, hey, can I replace your lateral? Unfortunately, people hear free and it's like they want to you come to the table needing something from them, like needing to give them something, which is a super weird spot to negotiate from. And so I would ask you guys to maybe consider even taking that the step further of like, if a person's lateral is failed and, they're having to replace it, it would create a different kind of dynamic.
Right. I believe that's what we're actually proposing though, right?
It is, and this is.
Not with sale, just at any, like if I get my lateral.
Yeah, if you find a failed lateral, like a person should have.
Okay, so I think that's the nuanced part, and I think it is worth a discussion on that, because we currently have that. So let's say someone, it's where you define fail, right?
Yeah,
And that's where it gets really tricky in
Yes.
our ability to get in, and we don't actually go in and inspect on private property currently.
Until
because
something happens.
Yeah, unless something happens. So if we find ourselves in a situation where someone has a sewer lateral overflow because they haven't maintained it, we have roots, then we get brought in. In a situation like that, we can require someone to go out and actually look and say, hey, yeah, you have a failed system. We currently within the municipal code have and do exercise that, where we say, hey, you have to come and replace this right now. You've created a public health issue. We don't currently proactively inspect on private property. That's that kind of nuanced area where we can't really go into. But we can encourage people through the $350, hey, let us know what you're looking at. Either are you going to sell your house and you just want to know, or do you just want to know because you know that other people will need to replace others? And with this change right here, we would also be requiring that when a property changes hands, it will go into a situation where it's like, okay, now you have a situation where you have to replace this. We now have awareness of it. We are saying the condition has to be replaced, but we're giving a time frame in which that can actually occur. So it doesn't have to occur right within the escrow at time of sale. We open up this window right there, and in that period of time, that's when the people can go out. And then I think, I'm going to stay out of the business too much, but I think you have a better negotiating right there because they have to do that at that point to replace their damaged lateral.
This is the one situation that isn't specifically directed to require replacement. So this would be an additional sentence into the code ordinance.
And don't you have the ability, you just don't do it underground, right? You got cars in backyards, sea trains, couches, right? You have a precedent for private property all day long. You just have never really done it underground. But if you want the precedent, it kind of exists for you guys. It's just because that's a visual blight. Is that a different?
It would, yeah, and I think that's a little different because I'm getting into a little the code enforcement, community development side.
Kind of talking about.
I think proactively without any awareness, I think it's something, if we have, let's say we have 8-foot tall weeds and fire hazards growing, I think it's something we can see. I don't think that we would proactively, I think this is more akin to going in and asking someone, their roof condition. Maybe that's a bad example, or something inside their house. We're not going to proactively go into private property to look for a violation right there to say you have to replace it.
I don't disagree. I just think like the precedent's kind of there for policing to some degree, if that's the way you want to take it.
And you already have data on failing sewer laterals on the website. I mean, there's probably already,
Right.
I mean, I think that, to Damien's point through this discussion is like, if we look at just the failed sewer laterals that you know of right now, what would that do to update the capacity at the plant, right? Like, I think that what we figured, it's like, was it 50 failed laterals or 100 failed laterals?
It goes a long
Was the
way.
equivalent of, I can't remember the equivalency there, but it wasn't a ton of failed laterals
It's
to
a bit
really
rough
make a
math,
big
right? I mean, it
difference.
depends on
And
height of
that's-
groundwater, everything else. There's
Well,
multivariable, but yeah, it's.
And that's the intention of this, is to add the kind of in enforcement, the action, there's a triggering, so the code already has triggering events that trigger a requirement for an inspection. And then as Chris mentioned, like this was the one instance where it was essentially a notification and a data collection. And then now this will add the action of the replacement of a poor or failed lateral within a certain time frame, to your point of, hey, we know these laterals exist and they need to be replaced.
That's where the data came from, but was the inspection upon sale program. We just didn't have the mechanism to require replacement.
But John, you're saying one of the things that you would like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, though. I think what you're saying is you would like also a consideration of those laterals that we already know that are in the database for those also to be required to be within some certain time frame updated.
Absolutely. I mean, I
So
think
that's
that's
outside of something that they walk into. And I think this is where the little nuance is, and this is a policy level discussion that, as an alternative, council would have to weigh in on. Because one is, you're talking about a homeowner that perhaps has been in their house for 10 years, happily, and I'm not saying without impact. And then you're saying
50,
that's
fair enough.
yeah.
And then you're saying someone else that enters into a negotiated time that they're selling the house, that they know that this will be an expense they have to pick up, so they can kind of plan on that expense. And I'm just saying that's some of the context that council would have to weigh in on that. And this could be something that we can think about a little bit and consider as an alternative, or how we want to recommend, or, bring that to council's awareness that we received that feedback here.
Yeah, and I think that we have to consider what is an emergency and what do we do in an emergency, and what is a crisis and what do we do in a crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very analogous to housing, but in general, if this is an emergency and a crisis that's offsetting our ability to address another crisis, which is lack of housing, then what lengths do you go to with the available data that you have, in terms of, that at least 30 of the laterals on that map in that constrained area are red and failed. What extent do you go to as a city, as a government, to say, hey, I'm really sorry, I'm really bummed that your lateral has failed and it's your lateral and you weren't counting on that expense this year, but you're going to have to go ahead and replace it, right? We're doing the same thing with the fire severity zones, right? Like so it's the same exact thing. And so I guess that's really the rub of it as a government and council. What are you willing to say is a crisis or an emergency?
Well, yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying. I'm just stressing that that's the policy level decision that staff can make recommendations on. Sure, that's definitely a policy weigh-in for them as to how far they would want to go retroactive on that. But that's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah. It's just like WUI. It's just like WUI upgrades.
Yeah, it's an interesting
Same concept.
analogy on the WUI one coming through, except one's from the state outside like that, and the other one's internally if council chooses to take it that way.
The only thing I could add is on the severity portion, if through this exercise, we have roughly 60% of the laterals that we don't know what the material is made out of. And if we encounter an orange brook pipe, then that would be like it's at the top of the list. So we need to replace that. So that could be an avenue to, be able to achieve that efficiency and the sewer system more intact.
That automatic failed report category.
Right.
Yeah, as we go right out here too.
But great questions. I'm gonna move on, I think, with what Damien.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
Unlike WUI and unlike the roof scenario, there is on the city's website, in the utility section of the city's website, it is a condition to be hooked into the main line. It is conditioned that you have to keep your lateral in good condition. It's a condition. It's actually written in your website, has been for a really long time.
Yeah.
That's not part of WUI, and that's not part of any other personal property like a roof. So to me, this is very confusing. I don't know why we've gone about this the way that we have. It's a condition. In order to have the privilege of being part of the main line, you must keep this in good standing order, or you don't get to be part of it. It's a condition.
Answer that for you. Specific direction from council about 8 years ago that said, we do not want you proactively out there inspecting, finding, and enforcing on those. So previous council direction had been pretty clear to staff that they really at that time did not want us to go through video, find, enforce that lateral. Now, I think casually saying this, I think you are hearing a different conversation at this time. I think there's, some different perspectives from the last study session where staff has been given a different direction, as we're seeing now, to come back with a variation on what had always been the sewer lateral replacement, that now I think you're seeing some more openness. I think we all heard some of those comments towards inspection upon sale. So perhaps that, policy changes.
I was in that meeting 8 years ago. I was the very first person hit with this lateral. I was the very first property hit with this lateral requirement. And that's the exact same comment I made at that time. So it was definitely made at that time. And there were others like me that made similar comments in that meeting. I understand that that's not what the city council chose to do at the time, but there were definitely voices in that meeting that didn't agree with the direction that the city council took.
All that.
That's fair.
And does this replace the offset program or is this just in addition to the offset?
This would be in addition,
In addition, okay.
and then we have some thoughts on a modification of the offset program, and I'm gonna, if we're okay moving past this slide here, I can get into that a bit, and we'll probably call on Miguel to I don't need this slide for the group, but again, what are we talking about for mandatory replacement, stuff like this? Okay, so what are we looking about for future changes to the offset program? We are looking at potentially two things that I think we've heard pretty consistently from the group. One being the equivalency of new construction versus existing and how that's treated and the impact on the system. And so item 2, we're talking about modifying this EDU formula for determining how many offsets are required. And that would be, we have some groundwork already completed through the recent flow study that would basically be an adjustment factor for new construction. And so the impact of this is it would potentially significantly reduce the amount of offsets required, which would account for the lower impacts of new development versus existing non-conforming materials. And then the second item, and we can pause and discuss these, but the second item would be a modification for the fixture count threshold for tenant improvements and additions. Right now it's 10%, which triggers a lot of offsets for minor improvements. And we're talking about making a significant adjustment for that would eliminate offsets for some of these smaller projects. I'm going to pause there. I think Miguel's probably your best person to talk specifics, but this is where we're headed. We're not prepared to bring this in April. We're prepared to bring these recommendations to potentially return later in the year. We're still trying to find capacity on the council agenda to bring this, but I think we've heard these two items consistently. We have some concepts. We need to refine those, but I think we're going to need the input of the people in this room to really move forward with these two. But I know you all have some thoughts on these.
On question number 2, I mean, that's really been what I've looked at. And obviously, it would be really great for the city to jump into this one, because just using all the averages in the study, I got it that one poor condition lateral contributes 26 times the sewer flow of a good condition lateral, meaning we have to find 300 poor condition laterals to replace in the city. And that would cover the whole general plan build out in terms of a sewer capacity situation. So that 26 times, I'm not a utilities engineer. Maybe it's 4 times, maybe it's 5 times, maybe it's 100 times. I don't know, but it's it possibly could be a huge number to where the city just focuses on a couple hundred laterals over a large number of years and could solve this problem. So it would be, I guess it's a little bit unfortunate to hear that isn't something that could be brought forth to council in April, but could at least the calculations be brought forth to council so that there's a rough equivalence of like how bad a failed or poor quality lateral is in terms of contributing to the problem compared to a new lateral?
Yeah, that's a fair ask. I think we've got several things that we've got going on. We did a similar type of prototype back in 2017, 2018, where we hired a company, ElectroScan, to kind of go through that analysis. So we're going to take that information, and then also the analysis that was done by the engineers from West Yost on the flow study also gave us the same information, that there is a benefit of having the plastic pipe, so to speak, versus non-plastic. So I think I think in general, we might be able to at least frame the conversation of, hey, here's the factor, and then either decide if, the offset's gonna be a fraction of what you're impacting or an additional credit. So in other words, if you have a parcel and you've got an ADU and you're replacing the lateral on the parcel with HDPE pipe, then that could be like 2 credits or 4 credits, whatever that ratio is. So I think that's a good thought. I really like the idea of what's the bookend on the problem. So is it 100 laterals or is it something else? The West Yields report did an analysis of existing laterals and then also the deterioration of future laterals. So I think that's the piece that we need to spend more time with the engineers to say, okay, what does this look like on a 10-year forecast, 20-year forecast? And is this the bookend that we need for the next 3 to 5 years or 100 laterals or whatever? So that's a fair comment.
But I think your ask is that we try to frame the difference in severity, and I think that's something that we'd like to do. We're not going to have specifics. We need to refine that and bring that with an ordinance change later, but I think we want to set the stage for these are some items that we'd like to change. We don't have those specifics, but we do know that it's a big difference. Right. And we can frame that through the numbers that we have in the flow study and the other study that Miguel mentioned. We're not going to have a specific recommendation, but we'd like to frame the contrast, of the 2 issues, I think is what we'd like to do.
Great. Because if it is 26 times, then it seems like I should be able to replace 1 failing lateral and get 26 credits for it. Right?
I think I want to be cautious on that though. We can, take the mass number right there, divide it by the amount of, sewer laterals and say 1 equals 26. But every single site is going to be totally variable in that. Just the height of the groundwater and allowing that infiltration right in there, the inflow is going to have a totally different impact on that overall system. So one house on one street might be this, another one might be something totally different. Saying it's failed versus failed, some of them fail means there's almost, 10 feet of no pipe in it, where the other one has cracks and bends and bellies in it. So just want to be careful. It's probably not as much.
I totally agree with that. It would just be great to get some sort of equivalence number because it isn't
scale
1 to 1. Right now it is 1 to 1. You can get 1 new lateral by replacing 1 old lateral.
Right.
And that just doesn't seem.
And Aaron, I think that's probably one of the biggest problems that we've had with this since really doing the analysis is because of the voodoo science isn't really the right word, but because of the variables of the soil. And a lot of engineering is that way. It's that, you take all these averages, it does feel not that great to say, well, you have to replace a lateral to offset, knowing that it may not be getting to the end in mind, right? And I think that's probably the biggest problem that we have with this is exactly what you said, is that the math that got to 1 to 1 feels like it wasn't really
it's not mathing.
It's not mathing that well. And I think that's our biggest problem with it. And I would say too, Miguel, if you're talking about over time, and this is something we've talked about before, how many new units is the city going to take in these areas? And is that enough new units to replace every failing lateral or every lateral that's going to fail? If not, then one way or the other, the folks that own these laterals are going to have to pay to replace them, right? So just band-aiding this now and getting 15 or 20 laterals a year from developers, but not facing the fact that this is going to be a 30 or 40-year problem that is going to be on the homeowner eventually is really kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, you raised a couple of good issues there, John, and I think you're right. If we had ultimate control over everything, just like we do on the public side of the system, we would definitely have a prioritized capital program on this, and we would, strategically look at it and think, this is where we get the most bang for our buck on this and this and this. But we don't have that, right? This is really that partnership, and it's not even 2 people in this partnership. It's 50,000 residents in a partnership with the city trying to accomplish this same goal. But I agree with you, and I feel what you're saying on that. I'm sure it is frustrating to go, okay, I replaced this lateral, did I make a difference? I think that's a fair concern on that. We will continue to see it get worse in some of these areas. Ultimately, I think we do reach that time when as many of those continue to fail, and we either through, maybe it's your hypothetical that, your proposal there that everyone that's on the list gets examined, or that they fail, or that properties turn over. Hopefully, we get to also a spot with new materials when we start taking out the old clay pipes enough that we really start to have that long-term difference too. Now with the Muni Code, which it has been for, a decade now, that everything has to be glued, sealed, fused together in these joints, we get to a point where we really are seeing a significant change that we can ultimately see down at the wastewater plant right there, the wharf. Sorry, Chris. So we can actually see that difference that we're hoping for, not see that. But your points are fair. Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion?
Go ahead.
Because I feel like we're just going about this the wrong way. To me, it's like we have two main problems: funding and motivation. The people who need to change their laterals are highly unmotivated to do anything about it. And the funding is coming from the wrong people. It's like people who are not doing wrong are being penalized, and they're not the ones that are doing wrong. And I understand that it's harsh to just cut someone off from wastewater, and there's a health and safety issue there. But it seems like you can cure both problems by charging a fee. At this point, we have a really good map of which laterals are failing. We know which laterals are the issue. Regardless of the lateral constraint map that you have, throughout town, you have a pretty good sense of which laterals are failing. And it seems like you should be able to charge those homeowners fees for having a failed lateral with a notice: by this date, you will begin to be charged this amount of money per month as long as you're not rectifying this issue. And it should be a fee that gives a certain amount of motivation. And then you should take those fees and put them into a fund to fund those people getting their laterals changed. Now you've fixed the funding and you've fixed the motivation. I don't see how this could be illegal. The current program that you have is highly illegal. I don't know how you have not gotten sued yet. This program doesn't seem like it would be illegal because it's very clear that the condition is very clear that you have to have a functioning lateral to be part of the system. So it doesn't seem like there would be any legal ramifications to charging a fee if you don't have a functioning lateral, and then using those funds to fund those people getting their laterals, a certain amount percentage funding for them to help them get their laterals changed out. It seems like a more logical system. And then you're not penalizing a bunch of people who haven't done anything wrong.
That's a creative idea. Yeah. I mean, to me, the first step is our inspection upon sale modification. Again, those laterals that have been determined to be in poor failed condition, we can't ignore those any longer. That's a first step. The next step, taking it to the end game, would be, we have the list of all that are bad, take mandatory replacement of everything. The final extreme step of getting to the root of the problem would be, if you're not going to replace it, there would be a fee or some sort of penalty that would fund the program. And I think we're taking the first step in April. I think these are great ideas to consider. I don't know that we're ready to bring that in April, but I think that's a fair point, Christina. And talking about, I think that what we're trying to focus on is the biggest impacts on the system and who should be contributing to those. And I think we're moving in the right direction. Understanding maybe we're not quite where you'd like us to be yet. But this is the first step. And I think we can keep discussing, but I'd like to close it with, if they're particularly Christina or Ian, if you'd like to follow up, I'll jump to the end and provide a contact information. But any additional workshops you want to get together, I know we've had a smaller group that's really helped us get where we are today. But the idea is help, because it's not a perfect program.
It's administratively burdensome on staff, very, very difficult to operate. So we're all open to these ideas, and I appreciate that, because that's, I think, one of the reasons why we're here today and why we're going in April is some of the ideas that have come from the room.
I would just like to contextualize, Chris, that this is a really significant change in policy for council. I mean, 10 years ago, and I know amongst this group, this seems pretty self-evident, hey, this is the way we need to go. And for those of you that remember, and I appreciate, Christina, you were talking about you being there as well that evening, this is 180 degrees from what we had gone down the road with originally, when we had large amounts of another stakeholder group within the community who also came out and said, we want it to be on, the current sewer lateral offset. So this is a pretty significant change. So I would say, in advance of this, well, not asking you to do this, but I think continuing to weigh in like this and voice your opinions from your stakeholder group to those policymakers is going to be important in this process. This is a pretty significant change.
I think the important thing to remember too is that we have exasperated that opinion, and we have it's been proven that, like you said, this is going to be a 30-year-old problem, and we're still going to be trying to fix it because the energy just isn't there. The motivation just isn't there. So we need to do it a different way.
Fair comment. So if you can get those questions into council, in that opinion, I think that really helps strengthen the recommendation. And we're trying to, I think, again, we're going to make this one change with inspection upon sale in April, and we're really trying to paint the picture for where we'd like to head next. So all that feedback and correspondence I think is helpful. And then we'll hope to see you on April 7th too in person. It really does help, and I'm sure we're gonna hear from the other side that evening.
Another perspective.
Other side. There's everyone's getting an impact, right?
Various opinions across our community spectrum.
Yeah, and as a follow-up, in the meantime, we'll look into that question about this transition period for properties that had previously been located in the capacity constrained area, and discuss that and meet up with anybody interested in that follow-up.
Awesome, thank you. All right. Another fun topic. So rental registry. This is, I think David just needs a few minutes just to high level go over what the discussion generally will look like at this meeting. So take it away, David.
Yeah, thanks, Simi. So yeah, like we mentioned, on February 24th, we're gonna be having our council study session on the rental registry. This is a follow-up to the rental protection study session that we held in October. If you haven't seen that one, that's a good one to go watch back. We talk a lot about the different rental protection policies that are already in place through state law, and then kind of potential tools or resources that are available to the city, and kind of some of the key findings that we made through talking to community stakeholder groups, researching other cities, what they provided. One of the kind of key takeaways or findings is that as a city, we have limited data sets on our rental housing stock. City council, other people get a lot of anecdotal stories and information about, rents, housing issues, various things going on with our rental housing stock. But there's very few actual data sets that we have access to. And so a tool that some cities in California have implemented is a rental registry. And so this is just going to be a more in-depth look and study session to evaluate that tool. We're going to look at examples from some other cities, counting through my research about over 40 cities in California that have implemented rental registries. Some have large history, some are just implementing it. So we're going to go over kind of the lessons learned and findings from some of the other cities, the different options that are available for a potential registry. When it comes to software, the mechanics of it, what kind of properties it does or doesn't apply to. There are different kind of menu options that, we've seen from the different examples. And then also too, just presenting some of the feedback and input that we've received from the community through, outreach to, the realtor groups versus tenant groups. There's a lot of different, obviously opinions and feedback. So yeah, definitely recommend coming out to that and appreciate hearing any feedback here if there's anything.
And I'll say we had the renter protections study session. That was a broad look at all sorts of tools that a city can have for renter protections. This was kind of purposely put on the work plan as the second phase, as a potential tool that the city could implement to get more information about rental housing in the community. The work plan item is this study session. So after the study session, we have done what is on the work plan. And so one of the things that we do in the staff report is explain to the city council, if you desire us to move forward with more research or moving toward creating this sort of thing, that is additional work that we have not yet planned for. And we will have to adjust some of our other housing related work plan items. So I'm bringing this up with all of you because we've listed those out in the staff report, and they're things that, we have committed to doing already. And that's kind of a decision the city council will have to make. If they direct staff to spend more time and resources on this in this budget cycle, we will not be able to do some of the other things that we have committed to doing. They also could say, let's talk about putting this on the next budget work plan item. So then we wouldn't start working on it for a while. Clearly, people in the community have different opinions about when this should happen, if it should happen, and if it does, how much longer we should wait to start doing something. But I just wanted to point out the timing challenges that we have is that the work program item was this study session. It is not going beyond the study session, but if there is interest from the council to go beyond, we're going to have to talk about trade-offs of that. Yeah.
You also highlight that David's the only one left in housing department too, so Bruce is gone.
He's not the only one, but yes, we are down a staff member. And so that's really challenging for us as we have, there's a million work plan items, but the biggest ones that give me heartache all the time are the housing element, which is exciting. Like it's an exciting time for us to relook at policy and planning and land use, but it is such a heavy lift. And we have to do it.
Yeah,
that
it's
is
more
not
of a requirement
an
now
option.
from HCD.
Exactly. Like that is not an option.
Yeah.
So there are some of the things that it's a trade-off, but it's like a false trade-off. There is no way we're not doing that, right? And there's a need to start ramping up to that already. There's other things that, we could probably push off into the future, but honestly, there's not a ton on the work plan that isn't just things we have to do to stay compliant and to be, progressively looking at housing policy. So I'll just point that out for this group, is that will be an interesting conversation from the city council as well. Regardless of how you feel about the rental registry, if there's more effort put into it, that's going to impact some of the other work programs. So questions, comments?
I know Laura and I worked on this, but doesn't every rental need a business license technically? Isn't that where we got our own? Yeah. And so
Yes.
there's a handful of licenses right out there, but
So we have a whole section in this report about the interplay between the business license and the rental registry, because I'm aware that that there are some thoughts that, let's just ask more questions in the business license program, or we can get more data that way. That's true. We could get some more data that way. There are some limitations to the business license process and program.
like people not applying.
Right. And when you have a registry, it's like established through an ordinance with a defined structure and things like that. And right now the business license process is administrative, not regulatory. So it's just a different type of program. So I, in my opinion, using the business license as a way to get more information could be helpful for the people that are doing it. But it doesn't have the same parameters and control that a more traditional rental registry program has.
Oh,
Yes.
we just went through a lot of learning on that.
But yes, it is required. And go ahead.
I think the point though is that tactically, if you put on finance to do a more robust business registry or focus on making the business registry a little more streamlined so it was easier for people to do, that would be a way to tackle that in this budget cycle outside of the budget for community development, right? And so if it's a budget question of like, you know, I think that this is like a two-pronged thing. The rental registry is not, that's a whole, just the basis of that is a whole nother like thing to tackle that we don't really need to get prickly over now. But if you're saying that we're going to take away other work that we're doing on housing, that's a hard stop, I would assume, for everybody in the room that's getting stuff entitled right now and working through the process, right? That seems like a really good reason to say absolutely not. We would not support that. But if we can push that into finances budget and get some data, I know, but I mean, that's what you have to think of things in buckets,
Totally,
right?
yeah, yep.
Make a finances problem so we can keep doing good work of housing.
So finance also, but I understand what you're saying.
And I don't, you know,
I think we can get something, right? And so we've already talked to finance about additional outreach. Like, honestly, we've talked about, do we call it a business and landlord rental license, right? You know, like because just even the name of it, I don't think necessarily a lot of smaller landlords think of themselves as like the same way as a large business owner, right? And so getting the word out, making the questions clearer about rental, you know, so like making sure people know you must list every single unit, because that's one of the challenges we have. And, you know, potentially looking at adding additional questions on there. It's a resource constraint either way. You know, one of the challenges, and we talk about this in the staff report of using the business license process, is we are then left with a pile of raw data, right? So could be helpful, maybe not. You know, it's like, it still will require housing staff or someone in community development to take the information that finance gets and do something with that. Whereas if you have and I'm not arguing, I'm just, you know, if you have a more traditional software system, it is analyzing the data for you, running reports. And so I think we could get some raw data out of the business license process, but you still need housing staff to do something with that. So that's kind of our concern.
Either way, that's the 2027 budget's problem, right? And so again, with the idea of where do the resources go, because that's what drives these things is if you're able to spend resources, you know, I would say that we're all going to say make it 2027's problem because we want to keep doing the other work that you guys are doing, right? We don't want to slow down housing other ways. Right. And so whether finance is dragging that raw data or not, it's still not a budget problem for you this year.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, the council could decide add resources to finance to address the business license, make that more robust, or add resources to housing to address the rental registry. But you're correct that neither group has the current budget or capacity to make major changes in that regard right now.
And I'm not advocating for the registry at all, but as Laura and I worked heavily on the business license stuff, wearing my downtown slow hat, which funds us for a lot of stuff, we've fought for every dollar we can get. But it just, where it kind of came up was at least in that circle with Greg and whatnot, is if, you know, you rent your business, and if your business, you have a license, and that's where it falls. So that's obviously then information that jumps across to a rental registry, and we've had the tenant protection. We've seen it all in this town go up and down, and obviously, as Aaron said, there's opposing voices in the room. There'll be extreme opposing voices in the room on this subject, but I'm more just talking about it from a kind of tax business standpoint at the moment, because that is codified right now.
Yeah.
You are a business there, as we know, but you don't have to go on the website. You just don't have to do it. And so it's an interesting.
It feels like
off the bus.
You have an existing entity that's set up to receive money for registering businesses, right? So you have an entity that if you expand the footprint of the businesses that you're registering, you're going to bring more money in immediately. If we spend a year studying the rental registry and then another year implementing the rental registry, the dollars that are going to go out the door versus you have a thing that's set up to bring in dollars tomorrow. If 100 more people,
compliance issue though, that's the thing. The drop down menu, you don't even have to add more information.
Right.
No one goes into it.
But if 100 extra people registered for business licenses next week, that would be more net revenue into the city next week.
And I think that we're going to talk about this extensively, but I think part of the challenge is defining the goal and the problem. So we've stated that in the staff report as well, right? Because if the goal is to get more revenue, then you're correct. If the goal is to get accurate, complete information about the rental market, then the business license just truly is not going to get you as good of information as a off-the-shelf program that other cities have, if that's the goal. And so I think part of what council needs to wrestle with is like, what is the goal of this? You know, and then a level above that, what is the goal of all of these housing conversations? And we talk about this in staff report too. If the goal is safe housing, so like less substandard housing, a registry isn't necessarily the best tool for that, because it doesn't get us any additional information about the status of a housing unit. It gets us, you know, who has what units and maybe how much they're rented for, or whatever basic information, but it doesn't get us any information about whether it's a substandard unit or not. And so if the concern in the community is substandard housing, then maybe a different type of tool is what's appropriate now, or more education or more code enforcement. So I just, you know, that's part of where the conversation as well is really trying to get the council and the community to define. And it's hard because like there are multiple problems, you know, and there are multiple conceptions of problems. And so getting them to decide what we should tackle first is going to be an interesting conversation. So
we can code enforce the inside of a house. Maybe we can code enforce some sewer laterals.
Oh no, don't bring sewer laterals into this conversation.
Out there.
But I really encourage everyone to participate in this. It'll be interesting, you know, even if nothing moves forward now, like I anticipate this will continue to be a large conversation going into the next budget cycle. So this is the time to start figuring out as a community what we want to integrate into the work plan item either way. So thank you, David. All right. This is the evergreen reminder about WUI changes. So they all went into effect January 1st. The fire marshal has put a wonderful table of information in community development with a video that you can watch where talk about defensible space and tree maintenance. There's a lot of handouts there that are helpful for people. We're continuing to improve upon those. There's a dedicated website that has copies of all of those and additional information for people. One thing that just came up recently that I just wanted to make people aware of is I want to remind everyone that our take is that if any portion of a site is in a higher zone, that prevails. I'm only bringing this up as a warning because we were playing around with the state maps, and the state maps might be the center point of the parcel. So like you might click on a parcel and it'll say you're in the high zone because the center point of the parcel is in the high zone. If any point of that parcel is in the very high, we are considering it to be in the very high. So the majority of parcels fall clearly within one or the other, but just double check, you know, don't take the listed zone as gospel on the state map. And you can always call the building and planning counter and get their interpretation. But that truly is mostly important for just the difference between high and very high, because that's where the defensible space comes into play. Otherwise, the home hardening, building hardening is citywide, so it doesn't really matter what zone you're in. So
we're still on standby for zone 0. It's still in legislation draft mode. You know, they kicked the can down the road as we all are aware of. And so their tentative date of completion and adoption from the state level could be anywhere from March to May of this year. So that's the 0 to 5 feet distance, right? So obviously we know this is coming, so we are already encouraging our homeowners, if you are replacing combustible wood fences in that 5 feet zone, to do it with an ignition resistant building material. And so also not to come across correcting you, but Lala did all that heavy lifting on that booth. She was a trooper on that, and I really appreciate her. Mika did an enormous amount of work on our webpage. And so it's slowcity.org/wildfire. And all of the information at that booth that Lala did is found on our website. And we are really close to getting the Spanish version of everything out there as well. So we're a lot of staff hours went into just those two components.
And Josh and I spoke at AIA membership meeting a few weeks ago, but if there's other groups or meetings that you all know about that you think it would be helpful for people to have Josh come or myself or both of us, we're more than happy. We're looking for those opportunities to come speak to groups that are already getting together that may be involved in this topic. So let us know, please. Any questions? Awesome. All right, moving right along. We have 9 minutes left. So any other things people want to bring up? Ideas for things you want to hear about in upcoming meetings or talk through?
Not that we haven't already talked about 100 times.
Would you like to talk about sewer laterals again next
No, I'm
meeting?
good on that.
Okay.
I let these two lead the charge on that.
Well, thank you, everyone,
Thank
for
you.
the discussion. I really appreciate it. And if you ever have an idea or topic that comes to mind that you want to talk about, shoot it over to Lala, or I think there's a thing on the website where you can add it, and we would love to add it to the agenda. So
Thanks for doing
Cool.
this to me.
thank you.
Appreciate it.